We were talking now about this chapter called time, and one of the interpretations that I gave you is that it means all time. And right, these are the qualities of people who are going to successfully use the capital of time to ultimately achieve success. Faith, good deeds, community organizing around the truth, community organizing on resilience. The question is like being resolute against what? When is resilience needed? Resilience is one of the most important components and ingredients of faith. That's why the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said nobody was given anything better than resilience. What is translated as patience? I don't like that word. It's resilience. And here we see in this chapter that one of the two qualities, two of the four qualities that are mentioned. And here we see in this chapter that it's mentioned exclusively outside of the truth, even though it is part of the truth, to highlight its centrality and the essential need for resilience for people who want to commit to living a life of faith and adherence. Because those of us who are OG, if you will, Muslims who embraced Islam, we can tell you, you're going to need a lot of resilience. It's a lot of things that will happen from the very beginning. But the question is resilient against what? So what I want to share with you now is a very important frame of theology. I teach this more in our class on theology. That is important for this moment if we think about time. If we take the interpretation of the chapter that al-Asr is time, from the beginning of time to the hereafter, from the beginning of creation to the hereafter. This is called Asr ad-Dunya, the time of this temporary world. And that is that some of our theologians, and this is really important for people that are asking questions like, why do bad things happen? Why is the genocide in Gaza happening? Famine in Sudan? Why is there so much racial economic stratification within America? Why are all these evil things happening? What should we do? Why is God allowing that to happen? These are legitimate questions that people should ask, and they should not be demonized for asking these questions. They are signs of a maturation and a maturity that is needed to live a life of faith in complex times. But there is a very important theological framework. There are three major theological schools within Sunni Islam, and one of those theological schools asks us and challenges us to look at time through the following. Number one, God's decree. Number two, God's tests. Number three, God's command. Number four, our choices. So we'll mention them again, right? The decree of God, which is unassailable, immutable, before creation, all things that happen, whether good or evil, we believe as Muslims, are from the decree of God. There's no other, there's not a God of good, a God of evil. Well, Satan does evil, God does good. That would be associating partners with God. God is the sole power, the sole controller of all things that happen, whether good, evil, happiness, sadness, wealth, suffering. All that is by the decree of God. That can be sometimes hard to wrestle with. I get it. Number two, the test of God. And ibtila is a test that happens and you don't know how the one being tested is going to react. So in our context, God knows how we're going to react, but you and I don't know how, if I get this, I'll be like this. If I don't get this, we don't really know that. How many times people got what they want and it corrupted them? And how many times were people kept from what they got and it made them better people? That's why we have a famous statement that says, رُبَّمَا أَطَاكَ فَقَدْ مَنَعَكَ. Maybe God gave you, but he kept you from something. وَرُبَّمَا مَنَعَكَ فَقَدْ أَطَاكَ. Maybe God kept you from something, but he gave it to you. God knows. But that's a test. Test through success and test through what we perceive as loss or failure. The third is the command of God. What do we mean by the command of God? What comes through his books and through his messengers. Do this, don't do that. Do this, don't do that. That's his command. And the fourth, what we call kasb al-abd, our choices and our intentions. The challenge in all of this is that when God's test contradicts his command, we see that all the time. God commands us to be good people. We're tested with really evil, trolly, ratchet, nasty people all the time. God commands us as Muslims to do certain things. We see the majority of the world around us swimming against that current. God commands us to preserve and look after human, dignity and honoring others. And we see wars happening all over the world now where people are being indiscriminately, even children, are being massacred. How do we make sense of that? So we have a very important principle that says if the test of God contradicts the command of God, you submit to his command. And the word for submission is Islam. I am a Muslim. I am submitting to God's command in the face of whatever is happening existentially. And no matter how popular evil may be, I choose what's with Allah. I choose the command of Allah. And this is why prophets are essential. The stories of the prophets in the Quran and even in other books largely mirror the power and capacity to choose the command of God in the face of the test of God. Scholars give great examples. So, for example, like the great companion of the Prophet, peace be upon him, Abu Bakr. He is commanded to be Muslim, and God's decree is that he's Muslim. But we look at someone like Abu Jahl, the relative of the Prophet, peace be upon him, or Abu Lahab, his uncle. God has commanded humans to believe, but his test is that Abu Lahab, Abu Jahl, Abu Talib will not believe. What are we supposed to do when that happens? So we see now evil permeating the world. It's a very difficult time, although I believe corporate media amplifies this sense of helplessness, amplifies this sense of melancholy to sort of subvert human utility. I mean, the irony for me is that secularism, when it's full fangs out, is really invested in Orwellianizing the world, or the brand new world, if you will, giving everyone what they want. And all that is meant to undermine, in many ways, the irony of, the buffet of what serves your desires undermines your utility. Massive state control undermines your utility. That's the outcome of modernity, where here beautifully we see that Islam once again is saying, act in opposition to evil, even if evil is going viral. Invoke your utility to serve God and be devout to God in the face of whatever is popular. So we're commanded to act in the opposition of the decree or test of God with the command of God. And that's what it means to be Muslim, to submit to that command and to affirm my belief in the unseen more than I allow what I see in front of me to shape my belief. And that's why the Prophet, peace be upon him, said the highest level of faith is to worship God as though you see him, even though you can't see him. At least you know he sees you. That's what it means. Don't be blinded by the world to the extent that you cannot see with your heart the command of God. See through the, finite reality of the world and its shallowness beyond that to the infinite creator who commands you and I, do this, don't do that. How do we do that? With our cusp, with our choice, with our utility. So when we talk about resilience in Surah al-Asr across time, we're talking about a community that supports itself to be resilient in face of the physical existential tests that go against the command of God. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. They worked together on the truth, and in order to stay on the truth in the face of really serious challenges, you have to be resilient. And these are qualities that are going to allow people to avoid bankruptcy with the time they've been allotted in this world. And that's why Imam Shafi'i, one of the great teachers of Islam historically, said, if this chapter 103, Surah al-Asr, was the only chapter that God sent, it will be enough. Like, this is all you need. Faith, good deeds, community, truth, resilience. I'm going to continue next time talking about the next chapter of the Quran, which is going to highlight some of the types of people that lived around the Prophet, peace be upon him, and what you need to be resilient against. It's very interesting that the next few chapters definitely invoke the need for resilience against the existential, which contradicts the command of God. May Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.